This is a help video for marching band cymbal players. There are a lot of things we need to know in order to be successful as a cymbal player, including a variety of playing techniques, and also how to read the notation correctly and know which techniques to use. Let's begin with correct holding position for the marching cymbals. This grip is going to be different from what you would see in the percussion section of your school band, whatever band it is, and it allows us to function a little bit more efficiently and more easily when we're outside on the field. So let's begin. We'll start with one cymbal, and what you're going to do is you're going to take your hand and pass it all the way through the strap. Okay. Then take your thumb, wrap it around the strap, okay, so that your palm is facing away from the strap. Continue to wrap around until it looks like this. So you can now hold the cymbal without actually gripping the strap, and you can move your hand around and the cymbal goes with it. Sometimes we need to adjust the tightness of the strap, and that's something that I will take care of by adjusting this special kind of knot on the other side of the cymbal, the inside of the cymbal. But for now, see if you can get your hand through the strap, wrap your thumb around so that your palm is facing away from the strap. Continue to wrap until you've got the cymbal comfortably in your hand. Then we're going to do the same thing, of course, with the other cymbal. Pass your hand through the strap, wrap your thumb around the strap so your palm is facing away from the strap. Continue to wrap around, and then you've got your other cymbal in your other hand. Let's go over basic crash technique. This is a standard crash with no special effects, nothing fancy, just our good quality crash. Okay? Here's what I'd like you to do. First of all, be aware that as you watch this video, everything is going to look backwards. So when I refer to my left hand, it may look like my right hand, but I still want you to follow the directions in terms of left and right. So start with your left hand and hold that cymbal so that it is actually facing the ceiling, like you're serving hors d'oeuvres, okay? And then we're going to bring the angle back just a little bit. So instead of it being completely flat to the ceiling, let's hold it at about, I'd say about 30 degrees, all right? Now that left hand is basically going to stay where it is. It's going to do very, very little when it comes to the basic crash. Most of the work is going to be done with your right hand. That's going to allow us to focus on only one hand and make that hand pretty much responsible for the quality of the crash. Okay, so once again, my left hand is going to be my bottom cymbal. It's going to be about 30 degrees and it's going to stay there. With the right hand, that's going to be your top cymbal. This is the hand that's going to do all the work. Okay. Now, there are a couple things to remember, very importantly, whether you're playing cymbals outdoors or indoors. And the problem that we sometimes run into is we think we're supposed to have the cymbals contact each other so that the edges are perfectly lined up. That is not correct. If you do that, you run the risk of poor quality sound, and in worst cases, you can turn the cymbals inside out, which we do not want to do. Okay? So there are a couple things we're going to do to avoid that problem. The first is we're going to make sure that when the cymbals contact each other, they are offset by approximately 1 inch. Okay? Here they are completely perfectly lined up, and here they are offset by about 1 inch. So you're going to take the top cymbal and pull it toward you so that there's about 1 inch showing of the bottom cymbal. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, when the cymbals impact, we're going to have what I call a double impact. They're not supposed to come together so that everything touches at the same time. Okay? What's supposed to happen is the first impact is going to be closer to you, and the second impact is going to be closer to the audience. Okay? So almost think of it as like an alligator's mouth that's open just a little bit. Okay? And then if I bring the right cymbal down to the left cymbal, I'm going to get one impact toward me, next to my body, and a second impact closer to you. Okay? So what you're going to get, you're going to hear the sound crash instead of crash, but your audience is actually going to hear crash. Okay? So here we go. 30 degrees, almost flat, but 30 degrees. Right hand's going to do all the work, and we're going to go for crash. That was a pretty good crash. You probably heard that double impact, but again, your audience won't. They'll just hear crash. Here we go again. You'll notice on that last crash that while the cymbals were ringing, I touched them to my body in order to stop them from ringing. That's called a choke, and that's going to come up soon in our discussion of other techniques that we can use when we're playing cymbals. But for the basic crash, spend some time. Do not be surprised if it takes a number of days to get a good consistent crash. That's completely normal. Okay? But go for that double impact and make sure that the cymbals are offset by about 1 inch so that the edges are not coming together perfectly. Now, once we've got the basic crash technique down and comfortable, what can we do to change the volume of our crashes? Well, as you can imagine, we just need to strike the cymbals a little bit harder or a little less hard. That's going to change your volume. So, for me, if I'm playing softly, I like to start with the cymbals very close together. Still, the alligator's mouth is open a little bit to make sure I get that crash. Okay? But since I'm not moving the cymbals very far, they shouldn't make a whole lot of sound. Okay? And, as you can imagine, if I move the cymbals farther, I get a louder sound. Again, when I want the cymbals to stop ringing, I just touch them to my stomach. Okay? And then, of course, we can continue to move the cymbals farther and farther apart to change the volume. In general, the cymbals should ring for the duration of the note, and then they should be silent when the rest comes up in the music. So, if I have a whole note crash followed by some kind of rest, then I would play it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? I let them ring for 4 counts, and then I choke. All right? If it's a half note, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right? If the note has a slur or a tie line coming off of it that is not connected to another note, okay, then that is an indication to let the cymbals ring as long as you practically can. All right, so whether it's a quarter note or a half note or a whole note, if it's got that little curvy line coming off the note that's not connected to any other note, then you're going to just let them ring. While those cymbals are ringing, or while you're resting and they are silent, we may choose to do something visual to capture the interest of our audience. We can do all kinds of things with our cymbals. We can move them here, and we can do all kinds of motions, and we can move them around and whatever we choose to do if we would like to. But most importantly, remember that the cymbals need to ring for the right amount of time and then be choked so that they are silent. One special technique that's different from a standard crash is called a chick. Now, before I get into it, let me say that some of these terms might be used interchangeably. In some pieces of music, you may see an indication using one of these terms and it might not mean the same thing as it does the way I'm explaining it or the way it should be in a different piece of music. We have to just come to figure that out together, all right? But in general, a chick is supposed to simulate the sound of a hi-hat cymbal on a drum set being closed. In other words, if I step on that pedal with my foot and the two cymbals come together and go chick, that's the sound we're looking for. So with our crash cymbals, this is how we're going to do it. Keep the cymbals together on your stomach, okay? Open them up, keeping them together on your stomach, but open up the side that's toward the audience and simply bring the top one down on the bottom one. It's a very, very short sound, like if you were stomping on the pedal of the hi-hat cymbal on the drum set. That's a chick. A choke is when we muffle or choke the cymbals as quickly as we can, no matter what the length of the note is. Whether it's a quarter note or an eighth note or a whole note, and normally it wouldn't be a whole note, but it would be a shorter note, like a quarter note or an eighth note, and we're going to crash with a standard technique, but then choke as quickly as possible. Standard crash, but we stop the sound as quickly as we can by just touching the cymbals to our body. Another special technique that we might see in our music is a crunch. A crunch is when we play the cymbals with standard technique, but we don't allow them to rebound or ring at all. It's kind of like a loud chick. So we're just going to push the cymbals together and leave them together. It's much louder than a chick because it involves more of the cymbal. Okay, remember the chick was this, but the crunch, we actually kind of wind up for it. That's the crunch. The final technique I want to discuss is called the swish. This takes a little bit more practice than some of the other techniques, but it's really, really cool, and I like when composers and arrangers use it in their cymbal writing. All right? So this one definitely is going to take a little bit of time. This kind of simulates the sound of a slightly open hi-hat cymbal and then closing that cymbal after it's struck. Okay? So what we're going to do is fairly standard technique, but start with the upper cymbal a little closer to you, and we're going to kind of push it onto the bottom cymbal and let it kind of scrape along so that it ends up closer to the audience, like that. And then we're going to bring it back so it shuts down. All right, watch it a couple times. It's kind of a sizzle sound with an abrupt stop to that sound. Dzza, dzza. Be patient with yourself as you get used to this technique. It will get better the more you practice it. That's the swish. I've made mention of the hi-hat cymbal on a drum set a couple of times. And sometimes we want our snare drummers to be able to play on a closed hi-hat cymbal, or the sound of one. And so what that means is there are going to be times in your cymbal playing where you're not actually playing the cymbals, but you're actually holding them for the snare drummers, who will then play on the cymbal. Now this can get a little bit dicey because it means you're going to be doing a lot of backward marching, because if the snare drummers are moving forward and you're in front of them like this, you've got to move backward. All right? So we'll take care of that, nothing to worry about. But when we give the snare drummers the hi-hat cymbal, we want to keep the cymbals together, still maybe offset just a little bit, or we may choose to actually line them up perfectly. Either way, you want to, in this case, not have them at the 30-degree angle, but actually have them flat, just as a hi-hat cymbal would be on the drum set. And we will hold them there while the snare drummers do their thing. Your left arm is going to get quite a workout here because it just stays like this for a while. And then that's providing a hi-hat cymbal for the snare drummers. Let's talk for a moment about notation of cymbal parts. First of all, we need to be aware that it's not always standard. It doesn't always look the same from piece to piece. So sometimes we have to figure out what it is the composer or the arranger had in mind. But we'll always get some good clues. Now, if you see a regular note head, like you would see on any wind instrument part or a xylophone part or whatever, that looks like a half note or a quarter note, then that is probably going to be a standard crash. A standard crash. If you see an X instead of a note head, that usually indicates some kind of other technique, whether it's a chick or a crunch, and to figure that one out, you're going to look for other information, like some kind of marking above the note. If it says chick or CHK, then you're going to go for that technique. A crunch will usually be spelled out, CRUNCH, and then you're going to do that technique. If it says hi-hat or HH, then it means probably the same thing as the chick, or it might mean that you're going to hold hi-hat for the snare drummers. Sometimes, again, you have to listen to the recording, you have to look at what else is going on in the score, talk with me, talk with the rest of the section to figure out what's going on there. But always feel free to ask if it's not clear, and sometimes we may have to guess, but usually we'll get enough clues to figure it out together. I hope that this short cymbal tutorial has been helpful. Always feel free to let me know if you need any help or if you need to borrow equipment so that you can work on those techniques and also develop the muscles that you'll need in order to be comfortable in a lengthy rehearsal. And speaking of which, if you're ever out there working on marching and on drill and you're starting to get a little bit too tired to hold the cymbals comfortably, please take that break that you need. We would not want you to get hurt, so then you have to not play for a week or whatever, so always take it slow, and I promise you that as the season goes on, you will be able to hold those cymbals for longer and longer and longer, and then you'll get to the point where you don't need to take a break at all. Again, let me know if you need any assistance, and I hope that you're enjoying your work with cymbals.